Last week, I asked you who Jacob was. And there was a deafening silence, if you recall. Who could tell me anything about Jacob? The minister said with great joy in his, no, this guy has been talked about a lot. Silence. And I said to you, oh, we're going to have to pay attention when Jacob comes around. This is the week, folks. Here it is, Jacob. Who recognizes this story? Jacob wrestling in the night. Because I preached on it in June, just on reconciliation and Aboriginal Sunday. I did use this text, and I preached on it probably maybe 3 other times, or for sure 2. Is there a bit of an echo? Do you hear that? Or is it just me? See if that helps. Oh, a little bit. I'll just preach very quietly. Jacob, one of my favorite characters. You know, Jacob had the dream about the ladder going up into heaven. Jacob who stole the birthright from Esau. Let's catch up on the story. Jacob and Esau were twins. They were born one before the other. Esau came out first, Jacob holding on to his heel. They wrestled in the womb. Jacob always was wrestling from the get-go. And they come out of the womb like that, and of course Esau's the elder, so he should get his dad's blessing. His dad's name was Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. That should be your memory work for this week. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Okay? Those are the big 4. Lots of stories. Not so many about Isaac. But Isaac was his dad, and first he steals a birthright from Esau over a pot of stew. And then later gets dressed up as Esau. Esau was really hairy and smelled like wild animals because he's a huntsman. And so, Jacob dresses up for his blind father, and he goes and he receives the blessing from his father. He steals it from Esau. And then, of course, it says Esau was in a mighty rage. And Jacob was like the soft, housebound son, and Esau was the big, rugged, outdoorsy son. And so when Esau flew into a rage, the nerdy, pasty Jacob fled. He fled. And in the wilderness, he has the mighty dream about the stairway going up and down to heaven, and God's angels coming between the holy and the unholy all the time. It's a great story. Now, many years later, I think it's 2 decades later, Jacob is returning back to the land, back to Palestine. And he's been living in Aramea, and he's been living over in Mesopotamia, where Abraham was from, where his grandfather's people were from. Been living over there, he's making his way back. And he's been living in the house of Laban, who was like a cousin, I think, of Abraham's, or Isaac's. And see, I don't know everything. But Laban was a relative. And there's 2 daughters, and Leah and Rachel, and he had to work all these years to earn the marriage rights and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, he ends up leaving and stealing a whole bunch of stuff and taking the daughters with him and sneaking out on Laban. And Laban pursues him through a couple chapters and all this kind of stuff. So he never gave up his trickster, stealing, wheeling, and dealing ways. A few times Laban got one over on him, which is good because Jacob deserved it. But Jacob, always a wheeler-dealer, always a trickster. And he's on the run, and he's made peace with Laban. And now he's coming towards his brother Esau, who wanted to kill him. All these decades later. And he splits his people into 2. He's become what they say a mighty nation. 400 warriors with him, and all of these herds and camels and donkeys and all this kind of stuff. And he's got 2 wives, 12 concubines, and how many sons? 12 sons. Sons of Israel, tribes of Israel, Jacob and sons. Come on. There's 12. And they crossed. Now, I just think Benjamin was born in Palestine. I just have a feeling. But anyway, maybe there's 11 sons. You can fact check later. So they come, and they're about to cross into the land where Esau lives, and they hear that Esau's got 400 men with him. And so Jacob gets all these gifts of, all the cattle and all this kind of stuff, and sends them forward with a couple servants, who in Star Trek we'd call the red shirts. because they're going to, they could get expendable crewmen. He sends the slaves forward with all this, and say, if Esau meets you and says, whoa, what's all this? Say, hey, it's from your servant Jacob, and he's come, and he wants you to have all these things because the Lord has been good to him, and he wants you as his brother to have all of this, right? I took what was mine, now I'm giving back, blah, blah, blah. Ends up, the drama gets better, because all of this is prepared, and then all of a sudden Jacob is alone. Jacob, who's been surrounded by his wealth for years, and by family and friends, he's a real whole life for himself, is all of a sudden alone. It says, and Jacob was alone on the other side of the Jabbok, or Jabbok. I like how Margaret said it. I'll tell you why. Because it reminds me of the word Yaakov, which is Jacob. And in the Hebrew, there's actually a play on words between Jabbok and Yaakov, which is Jacob and Jabbok, the river. They aren't the exact same word, but they come from some old ancient roots. Roots. And Jacob means heel, right? He was a heel in all ways, right? So it works in English too. He was a heel, but it means heel, and it also means one who supplants, one who takes over from or takes from. So that's a good name. And Jabbok means the river means to be emptied utterly as it hits the Jordan. To be emptied utterly, but it refers to a wrestling of some sort, a mighty wrestling to one being emptied. Way back, this is way back in pre-biblical Hebrew. And so there's a story about the Jabbok River being a place where a water devil, a river demon, wrestles with people until daybreak. Just leave that with you for intriguing comparisons. But this wrestling is, and the heel and the supplanting and the emptying are all linked together, and it's a Hebrew play on words, Jabbok and Yaakov. And I know you'll want to go and study that later. There are some key words in chapter 31 that build the drama. There's words steals, flees, and not telling. That are like circumventing, which all speak of Jacob's character. But here's what's interesting. In chapter 28, when Jacob first is in the wilderness, and he sees the ladder going up and down to heaven, a stairway to heaven, he says this afterwards. He prays, if God will be with me and keep me in this way that I go, then the Lord will be my God. If God will be with me, I will do this. But he's changed. You know that because his prayer in this chapter is, I am not worthy of the least of this steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown me, Lord. So we know that this is a story of turning, a story of transformation, and a story of changing. He is alone, and a man wrestles with him. We don't know who or what. Could be a river demon. Who knows? We don't know. We have to sense, there's arguments among many scholars that for sure it was God, because later his name is Israel, the one who wrestled with God and survives. But it's also the one who wrestles with God and the humans and survives. So that leaves it a little bit open. There are many who think it was an angel because a blessing is offered. But then there's the whole, why does the person need to be let go before daybreak? The one he's wrestling with. He says, no, let me go. Daybreak is about to come. And angels and God wouldn't be scared of the light. Right? So that's fascinating. So when I say we don't know, I really mean like nobody knows the definitive answer who was wrestling that night with Jacob. I always loved the psychological view. That, and this is credible, it's not just, I didn't make this up, that Jacob was wrestling his own Jacobness out that night. That his crookedness and his trickster attitudes were being finally vented and thrown off through this internal battle. Which is, I gotta say, when you wrestle deeply with yourself, wrestling with God. I don't think they're different. Somehow, in that night, Jacob wrestles with who he is supposed to be in God's ways. He wrestles out his Jacobness, his crookedness, his heelness and becomes something more. He says, I will not let go of you. Like, if it was God, why is he winning? Right? Like, that's the other thing. There's all these pointers to it. Could be God, it mightn't be God. How would God not be winning the wrestling match? Jacob is winning, and he pins the other opponent. And then the opponent gets a good one on him and takes out his hip. He limps the rest of his life. He wears the mark of this wrestling match forever. And he says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. He says, what's your name? Yaakov, heel. No longer will you be a heel. No longer will you be one who supplants. You will be known as Yisrael, the one who wrestles with God and prevails. A new name. Sometimes we talk about the story as if Jacob becomes a whole new person. But in fact, one who wrestles and supplants, Yaakov, and the one who wrestles with God and prevails are very similar in attitude. I think what's different, though, is the trueness, the goodness of that, which is Jacob is tenacious. So that night, Jacob is letting go of all of the not-so-pleasant parts of his nature, but is holding on to that true part that God loves about him, and that's his tenacity. He's the one who hangs and wrestles and will not let go. That's in the wrestling match. That's seen throughout his life. He doesn't utilize it well. He uses it to hurt people. But now God is saying, I need you to use it in wise ways. Your tenacity you will hang on to, because you are the one who wrestles and does not let go and prevails. Yisrael. So that brings me to us. Are you ready for a new name? You ready for a new name? Any of you born with a name you just didn't like? Wish you were called something else? Last week we were introducing ourselves. I said to Anais, hey Anais, good to meet you. I'm Dave. He goes, I'm Jeff. I called him Jeff the whole rest of the time. That's his name, that day, Jeff. You ever wake up and want a new name? You ever wake up and want God to give you a new name? Wow, that'd be something. What if we were in need of a new name? Something that spoke to the trueness of our character in God's way. Okay, now this is where it gets gutsy. I want to talk to you about the Prime Minister. Yeah, okay, let it go. Just move on through your thoughts here. Get it out. Everything, grumble, mumble, think what you're going to think. I'm going to mention the Prime Minister. I don't really want to talk about the Prime Minister. But what happened this week with the Prime Minister just speaks to something that really bothers me. Really bothers me. So just for those of you in at home, there's pictures that emerged of him in brown face and then in black face makeup, which is utterly, absolutely wrong. We know that now. And there's lots of arguments about whether you should have known that in 2001. Now, I'm just going to pause here because I'm mentioning it, and it's election season. And I just want you to know that the point of this is not me telling you whether I like Justin Trudeau or don't like Justin Trudeau, or whether you should vote for him or you shouldn't vote. I couldn't care less. Do what you want to do, and I'm not preaching one way or the other, just in case you think I sound either harsh or sympathetic. I'm swinging both ways this week. So you can't pin me down in this wrestling match. Okay? But I gotta bring them up because of what happens when stuff like this goes down. What happens in our society? What happens in our hearts and our brains? Did you hear your murmur when I said Justin Trudeau? There are so many traps, so much perilous ground when an issue like this arises. We need to be tenacious in our wrestling in order to figure out what really matters in episodes like this week. We have to be tenacious in our wrestling and not give up too easily. Because we love labels. We love quick commentary that defines what's right and wrong. Well, okay, somebody told us what was right and wrong. That's easy. Now I can go back to work. Or I can eat my sandwich or whatever you're doing. We love it. Just give me the right answer, the wrong answer. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who's the demon? Who's going to be shamed? Okay, we're on. We're moving on. Right? We love it. I bring it up today because it's a great example of the general flap we're stuck in as a nation. It's dangerous. We're becoming very much like our friends to the south. It's a flap as a nation when it comes to really important issues. We love sound bites. If somebody stopped you this week and said, hey, what do you think about that Justin Trudeau thing? How many of your friends or anybody who asks you that question actually wants to hear what you have to say? If you went on for more than 30 seconds. Oh, 10 seconds. We love sound bites. We love sound bites. Dan and I would be like this. I'd say, hey, Dan, what do you think about that Justin thing? He'd give me a quick. Because we're cheeky. We love that kind of stuff, right? And then move on. Hardly any of us are going to have the actual conversation that's needed to be had. There's a battle for our attention out there, folks. There's a battle for our attention. And it's hard for us to wrestle out what's actually important. Media has had some a good role in our society, but since 24-hour news channels came on, we know the media wants to bring you the news, but they want to do it in a way that keeps you watching all the time for their sponsors. Media and advertising in 24-hour cycle put together makes it not as intellectual and not as thoughtful as it might need to be, because they want the drama and they want you to watch, and to do that we have to put aside a whole bunch of actual thinking because they're terrified you'll change the channel. And politicians, they just want you to vote for them. I hate to put it all, but so much of it this week utilize this episode to mean something about politics and who should vote for whom and all this kind of stuff. And it's just quick, snap, right and wrong thinking, fear-mongering and threats and all this kind of stuff, knee-jerk reaction and polarities. It's a flap that we're in. It's a cycle that we keep living. I think we're ready for a new name. Well, I was happy for our friend Maurice Jr. LaBelle, we call him Mo here in this church, flipper of the pancakes, father of children, generally good guy. He was on the CTV 24-hour news, so they're all bad except when Mo's on. He was on the 24-hour CTV news channel thingy, and I watch it on the internet because I'm all 21st century. And he, you know, the person interviewing him just kept wanting to pin him down to what he thinks about the Prime Minister, or what he thinks, you know, just the quick stuff. And Mo is just too much for that. And, you know, he thinks and teaches about racism and privilege and all this kind of stuff at the university. And so he just kept talking about the conversation we need to be having. And the interviewer just kept coming back to kind of like, yeah, but how many times would be a problem and this kind of stuff. I can't remember the exact details of the interview, but I just remember the interviewer asking these things and Mo wanted to talk about these things, which was the real conversation. And it's a frustrating interview. It ended as just like, thank you, Dr. LaBelle. Done. Right? I appreciated that Mo was reminding us that there's something bigger. I do think the Prime Minister, he used the word privilege, he used the word racism, and he never explained either of them. He didn't explain in his second, more detailed, thought-out apology what growing up in privilege meant for him about safety and economic status and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't. He said, oh, it's very racist. He didn't say why brown face and black face is racist. Which, you know, he could have taken 20 seconds and told us why. We are not taking the time to think, discuss, and learn, and worse than that, we're not taking the time to truly listen. The wise people this week said, the wise people who are not people of color, people who look like me, the wise one said, why would I say anything? We need to listen to our sisters and brothers who are people of color about this. Yes, listening, good idea. My question for you around this is, did you learn anything this week because of what Justin Trudeau did in 2001 and other times? Did you learn anything, or were you just quick to what you always believed or what somebody else told you to believe and you moved on? Did your heart change at all? Did your thinking change? Did you grow? Because I think as a nation, we need to, especially during this election campaign, we need to fight every ounce of our habit for easiness, our habit of quick thinking, and not actually pondering, not seeking wisdom, not seeking true justice, not seeking the real conversation, and not listening. I think as a nation, we have been a place that can lean in and listen to one another. And we have been a place that doesn't just choose quick polarities. Remember when we didn't go into Afghanistan? Into Iraq? Which was it? Afghanistan. We didn't go in when the Americans went in with full force. We just stopped because we're not about polarities. We're not about quick decisions. We bore the brunt of much grumpiness about that on the international scene. We have been a nation that can have the big conversations. I think it's our truer identity in God. Can we hope for a new name? Can we hope for a refining wrestling match with ourselves, with our inner workings, with our habits, with our desire for black and white? Can we wrestle with that, and in so doing, wrestle with our God and be given a new name and a new way forward? That's the way of wisdom, the way of depth, the way of understanding, and the way of love. There were so many other things on the news this week, like gun control, that everybody ignored. Because we're just like, well, he's just trying to change the channel, or they're just trying to get one up on him, or they're just trying to get elected, or the polls were like this because of this. And all this important stuff went on this week. Not that that wasn't an important issue, but I just thought about all the other stuff we missed as well that requires a better conversation, a new way of being, a new name. And I love Jacob. He got the blessing, and then he says, tell me your name, always wanting more. I'm not saying he was totally fixed in the wrestling match. But he says, tell me your name, and the ninth stranger says, why is it you want to know my name? I got some theories. When people are named in the Bible and in ancient times, you got somebody's name, you have power over them, because you can call them by name and call them out. But I think he might have been just curious. Who is this? What has happened just here? He's piecing it together. He gets the blessing and a new name. And he says, oh, by the way, what's your name? And the ninth stranger says, why do you need to know my name? And that's it. It ends. We're like that too. We often ask for more, too much. We want it all sewn up before we agree to these things, like a new name and a new way of being. Yeah, could you just tell us, God, how that's all going to look? Then we'll decide whether we're going to jump up. No. This story tells us we need to just trust. Not just trust. We need to deeply trust that God has a new name for us. God has a new way for us. There is a new path for us. And we can choose it. We can choose it 5 minutes from now, tomorrow, in the weeks to come. We must trust, though, that there is a new name for us. We must trust that there is a new identity for us as a country and as a community. May it be so. Amen.